Hi, third graders. Today we're going to continue to learn about the choices that authors make as they adapt fairy tales. So today your goal is to compare and contrast fairy tale adaptations with the classic version of the fairy tale to understand how authors adapt fairy tales. So a fairy tale adaptation is any retelling of a folk or fairy tale told in a different way. So the original story is changed in an adaptation to some degree. The author might change the characters, the ending, the language, the moral of the story, the setting, and more. Today I'm going to be reading a fairy tale adaptation of Cinderella. And as I read, I'm going to be making a Venn diagram. So here's my Venn diagram to show the similarities and differences between the adaptation and the original. So on a Venn diagram, you want to make sure that you have space to write what is the same about both the adaptation and the original version, and to show the differences. So in this section, I'm only going to write down things that are true for the adaptation, and in this section, I'm only going to write down things that are true for the original version of Cinderella. Now, I know the original version of Cinderella pretty well, so I'm not going to need to review that story, but if you do need to review the classic version of the fairy tale that you read today, I have links for that in the lesson plans. So here's Prince Cinders. Remember, as I read, I'm going to be working on my Venn diagram. Prince Cinders by Babette Cole. Prince Cinders was not much of a prince. He was small, spotty, scruffy, and skinny. He had 3 big hairy brothers who were always teasing him about his looks. Right away I'm noticing some differences between this adaptation and the original version of Cinderella. So in this adaptation, I'm noticing Cinderella is a boy. And I'm going to write Prince Cinders. In the original, Cinderella is a girl. Okay, that's one difference. I also noticed that in this version, Prince Cinders has 3 big hairy brothers instead of 3 ugly stepsisters. I'm going to jot that down. Cinderella. Okay, and then I'm thinking about both of them, and I noticed that a similarity between both of them is that there's 3 siblings. So Cinderella has 3 stepsisters. Prince Cinders has 3 brothers. Let's read the next page and see if we notice any other similarities and differences between the original and the classic version. They spent their time going to the palace disco with princess girlfriends. They made poor Prince Cinders stay behind and clean up after them. I have some more I can add to my Venn diagram now. So I notice in the adaptation, they go to a disco. And in the original, Cinderella goes to the ball. Cinderella's stepsisters go to the ball. Okay, and then I noticed that in both of them, they leave behind Prince Cinders or Cinderella to clean up. Okay, So I'm going to keep doing this same work as I continue to read the book, and then I'll have a Venn diagram with a lot of similarities and differences between the adaptation and the original. When I finished reading the book, I'm going to look through some of the changes that the author made, and I'm going to categorize them. So I'm going to say this, Cinderella is a boy, Prince Cinder, Cinderella is a girl. So I noticed one thing that the author changed here was gender. So I'm going to write gender. And I can circle these two, gender. Another thing I saw is that it changed the setting. So in here they go to the disco, here they go to a ball. So another thing the author might change in an adaptation is the setting. So I'm going to look through my notes and jot down some of the changes that I see in my notes. And then I'm going to think about these 3 questions. Here are my 3 questions. So I'm going to think, what did the author change or adapt when they wrote a fairy tale adaptation? I'm going to think, what does the author do so that we still recognize the classic fairy tale in the adaptation? So to think about that question, I'm going to want to look at my both section. What are some things that the author kept the same so that we still recognize the classic fairy tale? And then for the last question, I want you to think about, how might the author decide what to change and what to keep the same? So why did this author decide to have Prince Cinder's brothers go to the disco? Why did he decide to have Prince Cinder's be a boy? Why did the author make those choices? You're going to jot notes about each of those questions in either your notebook or share them on Google Classroom. It would be great if you share them on Google Classroom, because then we can all learn from you and your ideas. You will be reading, you will be listening to read-alouds on YouTube, which I linked in the lesson plans. So there are 4 different books that you can choose between, 4 different fairy tale adaptations to choose between. You'll watch the read-aloud, and then you'll make your own Venn diagram as you're watching the read-aloud of the similarities and differences between the fairy tale you chose, the fairy tale adaptation that you chose, and the original version. Let me know if you have any questions. I can't wait to hear what you discover.